Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I am your host, DBJ, and all of you co hosts out there in the greater creative world as we talk all things tabletop role playing game, science fiction, and creativity on this channel. Open, unscripted, and kind of unmonitored as well. It's a little scary on that part. All right, so today, on this Future Friday, I thought we would talk about a particular subject, something that has captured the attention of all of us in the scientific sphere. And you might be thinking I might talk about uh, Jeff Bezos and his launch, the Blue Horizon, up into the upper atmosphere. And that was going to be the subject of today's live stream, and getting creative impulses from it. But I was like, I think everything has been said about it. Today we're actually going to talk about Dune. A second trailer was released, and we know that this movie has been the movie, which is the adaptation of many novels, has been delayed for a long time. But the latest trailers come out. Basically a rehash of what we've seen before. It's been recut to give us a little bit of what we're going to see plot wise, as opposed to just plain old imagery from the movie. And it's looking epic and awesome. And Dune has been around 60 plus years, something like that. I know it's okay. Um I know Dead Man of Tesla, excellent moderators that they are. Um, I'm sure they know when the first Dune novel came out. Yeah. Really, P? Pelora says, I didn't even know there was something else coming out. It's been, well, the issue being is that it's been a year and a half um, of our COVID pandemic, and the movie's been delayed. And then there was controversy behind the scenes in terms of releasing it in theaters, or will they release it on, here in the States, HBO Max. And so now HBO Max basically did a thing where every single movie between over like a year's period of time that was delayed, they're going to release it day and date, which means here in the States it's going to be released in theaters and at home for uh, you know, to watch. And many people feel like it's going to cannibalize the money it's going to make in the theaters, which means it's supposed to be filmed in a two-part series, and we may not get the second part if it doesn't make enough money, even though, you know, Dune is a consummate favorite, even though it hasn't been exactly produced for the big, small, and big screen in the best manner. Although I still have the DVDs of the limited series. It was like the low budget television series. I think it was like 5 to 7 hours long or something. But I thought we would talk about today. We would talk about why it is that Dune has captured the imagination of the geekosphere, and for those who aren't familiar with Dune, and then of course, even if you're not familiar with Dune, like, oh, that these are some really great things we can pull into our own, whether you're a novelist, or you want to become a short story writer, or maybe we just want to add something into our tabletop role playing experience, and why it is that Dune and so many people love Dune. So I said five things. It's going to be, I can almost guarantee it's going to be more than five, but let's just play along with this. So, starting, I was going to start big and small, but I think we'll just hop around. So one of the great things about Dune, long before Game of Thrones arrived on the scene, about competing houses, is that in the world of Dune, in this greater world, we have factions and nobility, houses, if you will. And the push and pull of having different characters that belong to different houses. I know people are going to complain about the pronunciations, but you're just going to have to go. I don't care if I put the incorrect emphasis on the improper syllable. You're just going to have to deal with it. So, House Harkonnen, they are considered like the bad guys. And then we have House Atreides and the Guild Navigators, and so on and so forth. And each of these these houses, living on different planets. You have characters that are generally loyal to their house. And the great thing about having houses um, with shorthand and storytelling is you have a house and then you have characters, and the push and pull is loyalty to self versus loyalty to the house. And which one are they more loyal to? Are they more loyal to their own machinations and their own desires, or to the people and the family, and extended family of that house? Some people might not even be loyal to the house. They may be loyal to an individual in that house and follow that person. And if that person turns and becomes turncoat against their house, does the loyalist follow them, or do they remain loyal to the house? Very much, this has been, of course, again, the parallels to Game of Thrones, and I would dare say even the Black Panther the movie, where you have different individuals, and is their loyalty the Dora Milaje? Are they loyal to the crown and whoever takes the mantle of the Black Panther, or will they follow the various tribe members as they escape when a new individual takes the place, and they want to have like a draconian leadership or something of that nature? Also, with the houses, some of them and many of them are, each house has a responsibility over various aspects in this universe. And to simplify it, essentially the guild navigators are the ones who are able to ply the spaceways. Basically, instead of using generation ships to go from planet to planet, they go through a hyperspace kind of thing. I don't remember what it's called. But in order to navigate through this, fourth, fifth, sixth dimensional space, they have to use something called spice. And these guild navigators are, within the context of the movie Dune, they are almost alien. Everyone's human, but humanity has kind of, the definition of what human is has spread out. And that's why it's very closely related to like transhumanism, where technology and interbreeding and things like that have changed even the mind and the body to be something different. And Uh, yeah, Pete. Palora's like, yeah, remember, kids, drugs makes you a better pilot. Yeah. To the point where some of the guild navigators literally are on the cusp of like Lovecraftian or Cthulhuid-ish beings. They don't look human at all. And pretty strange. I love, side note, in the television series, the short-lived television series of Dune, of course, they had a very low budget, and so they had these individuals that were dressed in, if I remember, it was like brocade blue with these long hats, and I loved it because the actors were trained to talk expansively with their hands, and their hands were very elaborate when they talked. So in our present day, like I talk with my hands. Sometimes I try to keep my hands below the camera, but you'll see my hands like as I'm almost doing karate with my hands when I'm talking. But these people were doing the same thing. They were like talking. It was just really cool how they choreographed their speech patterns and things. And um, while bizarre to look at, it was a good. It was like a really good note. And as a creator, I love the idea of knowing that an individual belongs to this faction because of the way their hands move. It's pretty cool. And we get to see a number of the factions that are in this world. And as we are introduced to the main characters, Paul Atreides and his extended family around him, Paul Atreides being in essence the Mary Sue of the storyline, as he's trained with knowledge and trained in combat and raised to be a noble leader. And of course, the Atreides are brought in to the planet Dune. And Dune, Arrakis, is a very, very popular. Uh, uh, the idea of Dune in the geekosphere um, has been used many, many times, and I think it's still a good story seed. Right? You essentially have um, a desolate planet, and it both represents like exploration, and almost an untamable post-apocalyptic style setting. Not when I say post-apocalyptic, not that a war happened, but you have this world in which it's extremely difficult for humanity to set their foot on this planet and survive because the entire environment there wants to kill you. Everything about this planet is there to destroy human beings and their little petty lives and stuff because you're so fragile. And and of course, we have to have the battle over resources. This is a concept that has not gotten old in science fiction, in fantasy, and in our modern day context. The battle over a resource, and of course, much like today's butt weasel coffee, that people spend lots of money for their butt weasel coffee. I'm taking a look in the in the Discord and whatnot as well. Uh, Knowing that the only way to obtain a coffee is to get the beans out of the feces of these tree monkeys or whatnot. The same goes for Dune. There's spice, and it's always about the spice melange, and the spice must flow, and the spice is a drug, and it turns your eyes blue, and it gives you, it opens up, it gives you the power of the voice. It opens up your mind so that you can read the future. Of course it is. Of course. And where does spice come from? It can only be gathered on this desolate planet Dune. It can't be gathered anywhere else. Why? Because of the sandworms, because there's spice blow from the sandworms and whatnot. And that is a very, while it is a very common trope to have a resource that is also in literally the most dangerous place in the universe. It actually, I mean, where else can we get a good storyline? Now, mind you, of course, in your own stories, you don't have to have a planet like Dune. You could pick other environmental places, whether it's a hard vacuum or deep space or bordering a black hole or a a planet besieged by dangerous electrical storms, and there isn't a flat surface around because it's all tall mountains struck by lightning to crash down upon into these deep crevices, only for the stone to push its for I don't know, through seismic activity, to push forth up into the atmosphere to fall back down again. Yep. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I hear you, Mike. Yeah, resource. Sorry, sounds like oil. I mean, spice. Yeah, 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 yeah. Putting. Let's see. A resource the world needs. So we're going to put puppet petty dictators up, giving them billions upon billions of dollars so that we can get that resource. I wonder where we've seen that before. Yeah, like Mike said. So a desert setting filled with combat over resources. Yeah, yeah, we still see that today. Plura says at least it isn't called something ridiculous like unobtainium. What a you. I get what they were saying. Unobtainium. Yeah, Avatar. Yeah. Really? They You know what? But listen, scientists are pretty ridiculous when naming things. Calling something unobtainium is not really out of the ordinary. Much like, oh, our galaxy's called the Milky Way. The one next door is called Snickers. Like, really, guys? Really? But don't bump. It's only funny for like the first 30 seconds, and then we're done with it. But much like first world countries setting up puppet dictators to get oil riches in desert communities. Those people living in those communities, the Fremen, like in Dune, are also a faction. These people living out there in the wild, essentially the science fiction equivalent of like Bedouin raiders, dressed in those iconic um, um, oh, skiing suits. Oh, what are they called? The iconic suits that recycle their moisture, and they've got like the mouth and nose attachments that run both absorb moisture out of their bodies and then drips moisture back into their bodies so they don't dehydrate because it's so, it's so hot and whatnot. Still suits. That's it. Still suits. I don't know why they're called still. Thank you guys there, Tesla and Plura. I don't know why they're called still suits. Yeah. A underscore says unobtainium is actually a word used in the world of science. Oh, I don't doubt it. But like Mike says, unobtainium was lazy writing, though Avatar had strong Cortez lust for gold vibes. Yeah, it dances with wolves, et cetera, right? Yeah. And I think the reason why Dune has held our attention for so long is, as I'm saying all these things, the battle for resources, the faction fights between one house and another, the characters being pushed and pulled with their own self-interest versus their loyalty to the house. And we're going to go on and on. I think it captured everyone's attention because we had never seen anything with this many layers in science fiction that wasn't straight up, I'm a good guy, pew pew, you bad guy, boo boo. It was very much the idea of you're the hero of your own story. You're the hero of the circumstance, much like as we've seen many, many years later in Game of Thrones, where if you took a snapshot of someone's life, you understand why they did a thing, zoom out and you go, yeah, but they're still a bastard. Blur says, I always assumed it had something to do with a distillation still. I always thought that too, that the word still in the still suit dealt with, like, I'm thinking of like a West Virginia backwoods moonshine still, and that you were distilling, as in distillation, distilling pure clean water from your own bodily fluids. Also, something else we can learn and pull from Dune is you guys know that I love this part, is the environmental section of it. Now, we don't delve in the main, most assuredly the movie itself, both the old movie from the 80s and this new movie and the television show as well, that the House Atreides came from an aquatic world, and they often showed a scene of, like, vast oceans. This is a world where access to water was everywhere. You lived on this world with storms and oceans and islands and things like that, and then they are then transported to a place where moisture farming is absolutely positively needed. And the idea of using the environment to tell, as a character, Dune itself is a character in the story when they start talking about the brutality of this world. And as a matter of fact, one of the things I really loved in the television series was that, to show loyalty to someone, the Fremen would spit on the floor. And spitting has most commonly been known as something to be very uncouth, rude, even a curse word. It is a normal, here today, kind of known to be something rude or improper to do. But on this planet, spitting on the ground, waste, in a way, is quote unquote wasting your resources, is a sign of respect. Much like when someone passes away and you have a bottle of alcohol and you pour one out for a lost one, that it's the same thing. And that's a little detail, but I love those little details because in those of us that suffer from world builders disease, I raise my hand. I go to World Builders Anonymous. You guys should too. Is that finding these little things, these like 1 to 3 little traits to add to a person's culture, their behavior, the things that they love, I think really goes a long way. Like, for example, Dungeons and Dragons, you have a community of people that are led by a circle of druids, and when the people meet them, they have like purple stains around their lips and their chin or something, and their fingertips are stained, and you're like, what's that about? And, well, it's because they eat good berries all the time, and they make pies and they put it in their soup, and they make wine out of it or something like that. And you don't know that they're doing this, but the detail is, oh, everyone that comes from this place has like these purple stains on their fingers and their mouth or something, as an example. So yeah. Pelora says, one thing I really like about Dune is that spitting is a sign of respect. Yet, with water being so precious, giving someone your water is a big deal. Exactly what I was talking about. And I love that idea. Thank you very much, Pelora. It's the it's a strangeism because it makes us. I like it because it gives me a gut reaction, like, I don't know, spitting. You know that that's kind of rude. Like, you know, just you know, uh, aren't you going to get a little bit of like schmeg, a little saliva in there? Like, oh, but I love it. I love it a lot. Mike says, making the environment the biggest antagonist is always a great setting. Doing so, you can tell stories like Dune, Predators, Pitch Black, etc. I absolutely love it. Yeah, man, Pitch Black. That's an unsung hero in terms of like using the setting telling the story. And whether you have much like we love post-apocalyptic settings, you know, these settings where despite our best efforts, humanity still can't put a foothold into these places because they're so dangerous, whether it's a world that's struck by acid rain or terrible electrical storms or winds that blow sand like glass that you know destroys even the hardest alloys, or the oxygen levels are terrible, radiation, the ground shifts and moves, there's a strange day night cycle, or there's a strange hot cold cycle that's very destructive and lethal. And I love that idea because again, like Mike and I and the rest of you guys always talk about these. You need a timer. You got to have that tension timer. And what a great way to do like a day-night cycle that's a tension timer. The massive sand dunes on Dune itself, tension timer, running out of nutrients and in a water source, or having that removed or damaged. I mean, sure, you might go into a running gun battle, and it's great if you've got power armor and laser weapons and things like that. But if an errant laser blast blows away your moisture evaporator, that might be more lethal to you. Than you're like, couldn't he have just shot me in the chest? That would have been better, right? It's like, yeah, I can put a slap patch on it and get right the heck back up because I don't feel the pain and the nanites are healing my body. But there's no way I'm going to survive out here in the desert without a water source, and my pack is destroyed. How are we going to make it? You know, and I like the idea. I like this idea of having something in like the game masters, the storytellers, the DM's pocket that we can turn that flip that switch on and go, oh, by the way, guys, you're going to have to watch out for, and then you fill in a blank. Salt flats, talking about Dune, salt flats, sandstorms, shifting dunes, quicksand, and of course we have ourselves the worms as well. And you know, who knows when Spice Blow is going to come, or the worms are going to come underfoot, and the worms are described and designed in such a way that they are literally something the player characters in this setting cannot defeat, you know. And yes, we do have our main character Paul, who eventually commands them at the end of the series, but the point being is that these are kaiju. The worms themselves, despite being a living thing, are an environmental effect. They're that big. They are the gargantuan, they're titanic, and they are the living, breathing environment. And, you know, oh, worm shows up, you're definitely behind full cover for once. If it divides the player characters and their adversaries, of course you might get eaten or sucked down into a hole or something like, or, you know, swallowed up a whole, you know, machines getting swallowed up as they are trying to harvest the spice off the surface of the planet and all that. Mike says the home world of the Twi'lek in Star Wars is another such world, inhospitable except for one strip of storm-racked mountains. Yeah, yeah. And when we have an inhospitable world, what a great place to force the player characters to have to navigate from one place to another. Often, much like Lord of the Rings, where we complain about Gandalf, and it's like, dude, you couldn't have kept the Eagles around for another half hour and just flew over to Mount Doom, But that being said, the there's always the excuse like, well, why don't we just fly over or bombard it from space or something? Well, you can't because spice is so important, or there's interference from electrical storms. We can't transport you up and down, or communications are terrible, navigation is bad, maybe the planet doesn't have a very strong electromagnetic field to use hovercraft or something. Like there's always some pseudo-scientific reason why you can't get from A to B very easily, and I think that's a good reason. There's a good reason to have that. Mike says you could turn the whole setting on its ear by making Dune into a sea. Yep, all water with massive sea serpents, and you collect valuable algae. Yeah, algae. Oh, here we go. Deadman says the Eagles feared Sauron. Really? We all feared Sauron. Damn it! Could have ended this. That movie could have ended in 15 minutes. Hell, if Elrond hadn't could have just kicked his best friend over into the into. Anyway, elves are like, oops, we have to leave the world of man. Gee, your timing's great. Friggin' cowardly elves. Don't get me started. Anyway, the turning Dune into an ocean is a perfect example of flipping it on its head. If we want to take something from it, steal. Take if you're going to steal from the best, you might. If you're going to steal from the best, and if you're going to do that, flip it on its head, make it a vast ocean. Maybe they have to harvest algae or pearls or some such thing, coral reefs or whatnot. Yeah, all that kind of stuff. Vampanoid's like, Gandalf told them, fly, you fools. They didn't listen because then it would be such a short book or movie. I know. I'm picking. It's far be it from me to be like, oh, that's terrible writing. Fold arms and pout. Yeah, Frank Herbert's Wave instead of Frank Herbert's Dune. Yeah. I guess he could do a third book, Frank Herbert's Garden. Just make it a big jungle world or something overgrown. I don't think Frank Herbert's Wave would work too well. In hindsight, we don't know. If Dune was an aquatic planet we never knew of Dune, I guess we would be talking about, wouldn't it be cool if we flipped on its head and made it a desert planet? But again, and the danger might be aquatic cities that might be impacted by powerful storms on the surface of the planet, and then other dangers in the aquatic depths, maybe frigid cold or whirlpools or something of that nature. The instead of worms, they are gargantuan, I don't know, electrical eels or jellyfish or I don't know, some kind of tapeworm type of thing. Who knows? Heck, even giant sharks or something. Now, something else we can kind of borrow and steal from. All right, Vampy's like, alternatively, a Lord of the Rings version of Dune, where's my car? Where they don't know where Gandalf parked the Eagles. Everyone's like, dude, that's sweet. No, sweet. No, what's mine say? Dude, no, but what does mine say? Sweet. No, but what does mine say? Dude, I know. Anyway, what a stoner movie. It's a class. It's a stoner movie. Sorry. Lastly, not lastly, but another idea we can steal from Dune is the science versus magic, the Bene Gesserit, the portrayal of the Bene Gesserit, and essentially the promotion of and the lie of the coming of Muad'Dib and the single male Bene Gesserit priest who learns the skills and the powers of these witches, but isn't supposed to come. But the mom has a child because of her love, and the child is born a male. She didn't get rid of him, which she should have. and whatnot. I mean, the whole thing. You guys are really Lord of the Rings. Are we really going to? Are we really doing that? Anyway, um, Mike's like ramp the danger up. You have to collect sea serpent eggs. Ooh, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Mike continues, says, for those wanting to use Dune and fantasy, switch it to Underdark and Purple Worms, and you have to collect the lichen that only grows on worm eggs. Ooh, I like that. Actually, that's really good. I really like that a lot. I like the idea of like collecting a resource from some of the most dangerous things in the world, which are like purple worms or purple worm-ish type creatures. Now, in if I can make this a short story, the Bene Gesserit are women that have used spice to enhance their psychic abilities, sometimes called the voice and whatnot. And both in the 1980s and a television series, and I'm sure in this one, when they speak, much like in Star Wars, these are not the droids you're looking for. They speak, and then it can hypnotize people and do other things that you can see in the future. And there's some vague psychic abilities out there. And one of the prophecies is that a male version of them will arrive and be this great Messiah. And despite them preaching this, Paul is born, and they're just like, yeah, he's not the Messiah, right? And there's something fun about the idea of people, A, wholeheartedly believing in a thing, and B, knowing that they actually spread this I don't lie, a propaganda about the coming of this great Messiah, and yet at the same time they don't believe it when they see it, and uh, it's mainly because outside of our own perceptions, we think of things as being grand and powerful and otherworldly, but when it's in our face, it's just another mundane thing. This woman just didn't listen to I don't know, the guild mother or whatever, and she had a boy instead of having a young daughter, and that set off this chain of events. But of course, the Bene Gesserit aren't going to be like, she ignored a rule. This must be the coming of no. They're looking at like, chick, what the hell did you do? Eye roll. I guess we're going to have to figure out if he's got any powers. I guess he does. You know what I mean? And those are the kind of things I think that we could pull from where you could twist your prophecy, oracles telling the future, predetermination, and flip it on its head and go, yeah, honestly, they made that up. They don't even believe it. Sure, they spout the stuff out, but inwardly, no. And then of course, in as the series moves on, the family of Atreides, one by one, they're being assassinated, and then the house is being taken down. And in a way, when the House Atreides comes to Dune to instill law and order, and they're like, um, oh wow, my brain just they are like the noble house. They are supposedly the hard workers, the honest ones, and whatnot. When they come to Dune and they get picked off one by one, the whole purpose of it is, yeah, we're going to put you in power to show how weak you are. And so the Harkonnen, of course, want to sabotage them, and they go about their political machinations to get them removed from power. And they start riling up the people to have these. The people start protesting and rioting and having mobs to pull them out of power. And so in a way, it was like a backhanded, like, oh, you're coming here to take over? Sure. We'll help you out. And then bang, twisted, turned on them, I love it. I love the idea of the best way to take somebody down is to put them in power and see what happens when you don't have any, when your resources are pulled stretched thin, and it's hard to balance. When you try to shake one person's hand, all you're doing is pissing off somebody else. And using that as a story element, is great because many players like to make up characters that are nobles or they have noble blood or they're predestined to be something greater, and everyone's looking around them like, yeah, you think you are, but whatever. Deadman says in one of the Dune novels, a lord of one of the houses, with the help of a group of navigators, stole a sandworm from Arrakis. It sure did, and it nearly decimated their homeworld. Yeah, because if you have a sandworm, supposedly you could. The idea was we're going to take it from its home, bring it with us, so that we can have our own spice melange, and it didn't work out very well. And of course, the whole Dune series spans millennia. So yeah, I don't, off the top of my head, I don't recall it. There's a gentleman with a I'll look for it later. But there's a gentleman on YouTube that has a bunch of videos that break down Dune. He's a Dune fanatic, and it's great to watch him. Mike says, so hypocrisy in preaching versus witnessing. Yep, that's not uncommon. On advice from my lawyer, I won't mention Catholicism in every movie known. Yeah. And again, it's the hardliners. Oh, I truly believe in the prophecy, and that's what motivates my life. Versus the talking out the side of the neck, right? It's the I speak the words, but do I believe it? Not really. And that again, another story. It's the faction. Do you believe in the faction and everything? Or are you just protected by it? And it's just it's just lip service. You're just going like, well, I'm part of this group because I'm loyal to the people in it, but their real mantras, I don't. I preach it, but I don't believe in it. Very common. Prolora says the Gom Jabbar scene in the book has always stuck with me. The little box that just inflicts pain but doesn't do any lasting damage. Yes, what a great. Okay, so for those who don't know, there is a very early scene in the novel where Paul is being tested by the Bene Gesserit matron, and there's two things that happen. One, Paul is instructed as a small child or young individual to put his hand inside of a small box. And she explains in the box is nothing but pain. And then she has a needle and puts the needle next to, up to his carotid artery. And it's like, this is a poison. And it kills anybody that is an animal. Are you a man or an animal? And the box, I presume, both technologically and psychically, starts to do something to his hand. And in his mind, he can feel his hand being like burning and the skin peeling off from like acid. Basically, the box is an imagination tool. It is an illusionary tool but it feels real. And the point is, if he snatches his hand out the box, the woman is just going to be like, well, he's not worthy, kill him, right? She doesn't think he's worth anything. But if he succeeds, he lives. And of course, he passes it by. But that little tool, I love that idea because you could expand that into something cultural within your own game design or something. Like we often, using Dungeons and Dragons or holodecks or something, we often think of like, oh, they're used for pleasurable experiences. We're going to use illusions to make it seem like a different world. But psychically, illusions could be extremely painful. Imagining having your flesh ripped from your body, and at that moment, it feels real. And what kind of society would use something like that? I don't know, but it sounds awesome. It could even be a type of Law and Order court kind of thing, like put your hand in a box. All right, did you commit this crime? No, I did not. And instead of like a lie detector with like little beeps and check marks, it might be like, all right, the pain keeps getting worse and worse every time you lie. Mike's like, every time you say Law and Order, I hear ching ching. I love the music for that. It's just so simple. It was just very simple. Law and Order. Boom, 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 boom. Next scene. Just right in it, walking down the street or interrogating somebody. I love that show. Pelora says there's a similar real world thing which involves lining gloves with bullet ant stingers. I did not know that. I wouldn't want to know that, but ugh, ugh. Yeah, no thank you. No thank you. All right. It's a rite of passage thing. Wow. Wow. I no, I never heard. I mean, there are horrific rites of passages from many things around the world. I'm sure that's one of them. I'd never heard of it, but that's awesome though. Yeah, it makes me think of of the rites of passage that deals with um, um, pushing the mind further than the body can follow, whether they're painful, exposure to the elements, eating certain foods, body scarification and mutilations and things of that nature. Yeah. Mike says, I can't remember the show, but there was a bomber who had lost one hand to an explosion and suffered from phantom pain in the missing hand. His pain ended when the hero made him see his remaining hand in a mirror. I did not know. Oh wow! And Plur says it's from House. Wow. Okay. Okay. That there's something that you that's just I it just made me think of something that's going to just make me go down another rabbit hole, and I'm not going to do that. Um, but I'm going to steal it though. All right. So as we follow Paul Atreides, the main character, through Dune, one of the things that I feel that we can use for like whether it's tabletop role playing and whatnot is now that we've set up this world where we have these different factions, we've got the environment, we've got oracles and premonitions and foretelling of the future. We have a war going on, riots, resource extraction, and at any moment in this sandbox, pun intended, of our sandbox, when a player turns the corner, we can always have them bump into something. There's a I, I'm going to misinterpret this for uh, for you guys, but I think you're going to get the gist. And there's a writing tool when it comes to movie making that says when there's a lull in the action, have someone bust down the door and start shooting. And essentially, what that means is, and I know I totally ruined that. There's a quote that deals with that, but I totally ruined it. But you get the point in the sense of one of the problems that we find in sandbox gaming versus railroading, two extremes. In sandboxing, is that when the players decide to go left instead of right, that what ends up happening is in our minds as the creators and running these games, we don't have anything to cause friction against the player characters. We don't have a thing that's going to push them to make a decision, to move, that tension timer. And in Dune, what we see is when Paul starts moving back and forth, he's getting premonitions of this young girl, and then there's rioting and assassinations, and the machinations of the Harkonnen against his own family, Atreides, and then he's got his family members that are always like, "You need to start learning this. You got to learn start. We need you to sit in on this meeting. We need you to learn some sword skills. We need you to learn your psychic powers. You're being besieged by nightmares. It's also there's sandstorms, and we're going to button down the hatches." And each time he's turning, he's bumping up against another problem. He's being pulled in another direction. He is. Yes, it's a novel, so a novelist can push and pull the dynamics of that. But if we talk a sandbox, these are the things that help make a sandbox alive. Like if this person wasn't there, all these things would still be happening. The fact that they are there, they are constantly being beat upon the head and shoulders of all of their responsibilities, or trying to avoid said responsibilities to move around. We know player characters, they're gonna cause destruction and then leave as fast as possible. And when they leave, we need them to bump up against something else, and they're going to have to, even if it's not something directly related to the damage they caused beforehand, we know that player characters are going to get themselves into trouble. And if they don't, we need to get them into trouble. Yep. Mm, 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 mm. Mm, mm, mm. You guys are still talking about House. At least there's a similar thing in House, fooling his brain into thinking he could let go of the grenade that blew his hand off. Mm, mm, mm. That's awesome. I it makes me think of dreams and parallel universes and what ifs and things like that. Yep. Mike says tension equals motivation. Yep. Writers motivate by creating tension. DMs motivate through challenge. And as we see breaking down a little bit of the core essential values of Dune, what we see is challenges stacked on other challenges, social challenges. Sure, a player character wants to be Billy Badass, but if they have to navigate not offending the Harkonnen because they're also on the same planet and they are your enemies, and even though you want to, blast them in the face with your laser rifle, you know you're going to start an all-out war. Though those are great challenges. At the same time, hey, something's wrong with the spice harvester out so many hundreds of kilometers away, and everyone's rolling their eyes like, oh, we got to go out into the desert again. And I was just in the midst of intimidating the Harkonnen or something, and they're just looking at you like, bye, see ya, go deal with your responsibilities, I'll still be here speaking in the ear of your allies and whatnot. And I love that push and pull, and I think we can learn a lot from this classic story of Dune in terms of our world building and our storytelling and our games. Like, oh, let's add in 1 to 3 social challenges that we can, on a 3x5 card that I could pull out of my ass. Oh, here's a couple of 5 environmental challenges I can put in there. Let's talk about some of the technology before we get out of here. There is, and I don't often see this too often in other sci-fi, future science fiction that has been written. But one of the great things that was done in Dune, uh, Herbert wanted to have medieval combat in the science fiction realm, and he knew that with missiles and laser rifles and power armor and all of these things, that he had to figure out a way to make a limitation. And so they have these skin suit force fields that are around their body. I do feel like the force fields that were portrayed in the 80s version of it is actually quite slick. For low tech, you look it up on YouTube or get some images. It's actually pretty slick. It's pretty cool. It almost looked fractal, geometric fractal around the bodies. But the whole idea was the faster the incoming attack, the greater the defense was against it. So uh, uh, the hand and a knife and a melee weapon move slower than a slug throwing a projectile or a laser beam or something of that nature. So, in order to take somebody down who had on a force field, whether I don't know where it was, I think it was attached to their belt or to their forearm or something like that, that you had to learn how to do, hand to hand combat and learn to use it and slowly slide your weapon in, because the faster you did it, the more defense they had. And so of course you had to get in so close that you had to start grappling and then slowly sliding the blade. In one of the Paul's training sessions, that's exactly what he does. You get, fight, grapple, thrown to the ground, slide around, turn, and then slowly slide blade up close to person's nether regions or around their throat or something like that, and then you can kill them. And the great part about that technology was, how do we limit just blasting somebody from orbit? Oh, we're going to use this other method. I think also, although this wasn't described, this is described more in the books than any of the television or movies, is that they also had these sound voice box units, and it's like if the force fields, if you use the attack, if you blast the force fields, it would cause like a nuclear style explosion or something, and you didn't want to do that because it would wipe out your own army. So people were hesitant to use force fields because they would be blasted by these blasters, and people were hesitant to use the blasters because they would blast somebody with the force fields. It was something of that nature. I'm terribly describing it, but I like the idea of like technology limited. Like for example, maybe the players are on a planet where the power core for their energy weapons drains very quickly for some because of some background pseudoscientific yada yada, right? And so now when the players get there, they're like, oh, my Billy Badass is just a Billy kind of cool, marginally sweet. I don't know. Mike says the Jaded NPC is also a great tool to misdirect the players. Jaded NPC, yeah. A task to repair or investigate, where the Jaded NPC expert or mentor leads the protagonist unknowingly into danger, is a writing staple. Oh yeah, and sometimes the Jaded NPC, the Jaded NPC walks across a razor's edge of I've done this so long, I'm tired of doing the thing, or I've done this so long, we need to make a change. Almost as if we've seen the idea of terrorist. The Jaded NPC becomes a transformative element of the only way to make things change is to make things worse. And to make things worse, we're going to take our protagonists, put them in the most dangerous situation possible to force everybody else to react to the dangerous situation to then get us to solve the problem. We've seen this in a lot of IP where a patriot causes a terrorist action, hiding it as a false flag to get us to then respond to terrorist actions, right? To go, oh, those others caused the death of all these people, but the patriot is saying, oh, I did it myself, but I'm gonna pretend it's somebody else, and I'm gonna make it look like it was somebody else. What is the movie Constantine? Is that the archangel Michael is like, oh, I'm going to bring about the Antichrist, because once people know the revelations are coming and the world is going to end, everyone's going to become more faithful and turn to God, right? Yeah. Pelor says there are also those gladiator half shields that get brought up. It's mostly an excuse to show off the Harkonnen bloodlust. Oh yeah, the medieval force shield that's on the arm, but it's like a half shield kind of thing, and you get to use the Harkonnen like barbaric fighting styles and whatnot. I will kill him. I will kill him. I will kill him. Exactly. I mean, it's an excuse, of course. Yeah, it's an excuse, but why not? Uh, we can use that in our own games if we go, player characters walking around with nothing but like incendiary grenades and high tech cyber weapons and stuff. But I wanted this to be a little bit different. Oh, okay. How about on this planet, et cetera, et cetera? How about the laws on this planet say, or the interaction with things on this world make it difficult to do the thing, to have the thing? We see this in 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons with the easy button on, oh, I'm just going to use my Lehman's tiny hut, so I won't have to worry about camping out. Oh, my character can automatically scavenge for food and supplies, so I don't have to worry about it. And a dungeon master's like, I wanted to make this more dynamic. So in this session, it won't work the way you think it does, Mike says investigating a relay, a radio tower, etc., becomes the start of a worm attack. Oh, yeah. Yep. Mike goes on to say the jaded NPC is the door from old to new. Exactly. And again, harsh environment. That means the player a very easy. Why is my player there? Reason, right? Oh, I've got to fix a radio tower, a signal. Maybe they important medicine. Supplies need to be taken from one place to another. A group of workers are stuck out in the open, and it's possible they're going to be attacked by a worm. A worm attack because of the harsh. We know that there's giant worms all over the planet, and or spice has been harvested, and we've lost communication with the group harvesting the spice. You can go on and on creating these little story seeds, and a lot of times those story seeds are just the way of life in this community. And if we think of the place as a living, breathing world building, as we're talking about building, if we go back to our ocean world, the same thing can happen. Submarines sunk to the bottom of the ocean, always losing communications is a great thing. Having something corroded away and it's damaged, a lack of, not just lack of communication, lack of supplies, broken equipment is always a great motivator, whether it's mobility issues, tank treads went bad in the desert, propellers went out or got tangled or something in the deep ocean, HVAC systems, breathing, food, oxygen levels, all that kind of stuff, messing with those things, power systems, power core goes out because of we ran out of power, unobtainium to power the machines. I know obtainium was a mineral that they never really described, but you get the point. It's it's just a great way for us to go, oh, I ran out of ideas. Oh, I know. Mike Gould says, I find it odd that the characters in Dune used knives when spears do the same job but from next door. Yeah. Yeah, and heck, with high technology, you could probably have a collapsible spear pretty easily. But I don't know. A phalanx of force field pikemen would have changed Dune. Yeah, yeah. If I'm not mistaken, don't the Fremen use like pikes and spears, or are those thumpers? Are they the long staves and stuff that they have as well, or they run around with thumpers? Mike says using the ocean world, the water itself could be a greater antagonist, simply by making the salt in the water very corrosive. Metal fails. Exactly. All kind. I mean, actually, in our real world, every ocean going man-made structure is in a constant battle against corrosion all the time. Even the greatest like ocean liners and yachts and cruise ships, they are constantly battling the elements. That's why you always have people scrub the decks down on ships, on even small vessels. You have to use fresh water to get all the salt water off, even if it's just a slight spray. A deckhand. Why are they constantly scrubbing a deck? It's not dirty. Well, it's not the dirt. It's the salt. It's the corrosive salt. So they're constantly washing it off. This could just be you just turn the dial up. Hey, guess what? Hey PCs, your starship that you wanted to, I don't know, that can come into an atmosphere and go into the deep ocean. That's great, but you're going to have to recondition it about every week or something, because the salt water is probably going to damage your engines and your communications, and you may not be able to open up a hatch, or and all kinds of like random random problems that come about. Mike's like, I'm talking about taking salt to the next level. What takes years on Earth takes hours on this world. Yeah, heck, you could even do the same thing with like armored armored characters walking around or swimming around in this world. Like, oh, we have swimsuits, but listen, you're going to have to swim from A to B. There's a good chance you're not going to make it because the salt's going to corrode your diving suit or something, and that would be kind of cool too. Swimming from one place to another, knowing that the high pressures of the deep ocean or something. Yeah. Deadman says on a metal ship they use zinc ingots to counteract the degradation from salt. Oh yeah, they aren't propellers made out of like zinc and copper or something. I saw one of those. It was on one of those documentary making of episodes on a show where they make the giant propellers on cruise ships, and they're extremely expensive because of the fact that they are so resistant against corrosion. But all the mechanical parts, anytime you have one metal moving part against another metal part, and you keep continuing that metal part moving against another one, you're leaving yourself open to corrosion, which is why like a paddle, as basic as a paddle is on a boat, it's far more it's more easier to fix than a paddle connected to another device connected to another device. Yeah, the more complex you make it, the greater chance you have of failure. Unfortunately, the heroic or villain species there might have the same ability as bull sharks. Ooh, they can switch from salt to freshwater. Now make them amphibious, and you have a real threat. Sahogan, but more sharky. Yeah, yeah. On aquatic world, yeah, I love it. I love it to death, man. That I mean, there's so many things. This is why I think Dune has held our attention with subconsciously, because when we think of these things, it's like, oh, it would just be very easy for, like, if we took away the threat of the planet Dune, like if Dune as a planet wasn't very threatening, the story would be even much simpler. Okay, there would just probably be a big battle, a couple assassinations, somebody would blast somebody in the back of the head, and you're done. But there's this both sides, the Harkonnen and the Atreides, at least in this world, need this extra resource, and they both need to be on good working terms with the guild navigators, who are the ones who navigate their ships from planet to planet and take resources and stellar ships and armies from one place to another. You got to be good friends with them. Maybe in this aquatic world, as we're talking, maybe there is a guild that makes these very high tech. Another guild maintains the craft that go through an aquatic world. The PCs need to befriend them. You can't offend them at all. Don't go all murder hobo on us, because if you do, you're not going to be able to leave this, I don't know, sub aquatic bubble world that's dangling off of seaweed down in the bottom of the ocean. And when the PCs need to get the hell out of there, but they offended literally the sea navigators or something. Mike says, add a belief system that's more than eat, say like Bushido. Oh yeah, add a belief system. We have a lot of ones you can take apart here on our world. Bushido, Taoism, hey, Christianity, Pirates Code, the Knights Code of Honor, and you could go into even smaller, l- lesser known cultures from different periods of time around the world. Buddhism, yep. And you can start to take them and start to layer them on top. And I understand that some of me saying this, some people might get offended, like, I really wouldn't appreciate you using my Catholicism as an overlay for your sci-fi world, right? But on the other hand, while some might be offended you're doing that, on the other hand, you're going, no, because I really like the elements of this and I think it really fits into my world. So, and it could make, some people don't want their belief system used as the bad guy, right? The antagonist in your world, if they are an antagonist. But yeah, oh yeah. Mike says, so appealing to the shark's honor or prestige helps in gathering this resource. Now you have intrigue like the Five Rings. Ooh, maybe even those those sharks, uh, as bestial as they are, maybe the only thing keeping them in a civilized way is their code of honor. So everybody knows you honor them by honoring their code, because otherwise they're just going to kill you, right? Give those sharks to Hogan some European accents, and now you've got street sharks. or oh, what's his name from the Harley Quinn show? Oh man, I can't remember his name. Sharkman. Oh, it's on the top of my tongue, the tip of my tongue. But anyway, yes, yeah. Uh, Circling this back, and we're going to summarize a little bit of this. Like Tesla put into the Discord, Dune is a science fiction media franchise that originated with the 1965 novel Dune. Forgot 65, so that's, yeah, it's 60 years, 60 plus years, by Frank Herbert, and has continued to add new publications. Dune is frequently cited as the best selling science fiction novel in history. It won the inaugural Nebula Award for Best Novel in 1965 and the Hugo 1966 Hugo Award. It was later adapted into a 1984 film. I didn't know that was the same year the Nebula Award came out. Hmm. King Shark. That's it. King Shark. God, that's I couldn't remember. King Shark was on Flash as well. Yeah, I forgot King Shark. I was like, whoa, I couldn't remember. So Harley Quinn show's so funny. I love it. Mike says to be fair, Star Trek Voyager approached the Catholicism versus evolution argument in an episode with spacefaring dinosaurs. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. But anyway, guys, I thought we would talk about Dune. Take a look at the trailer, the I guess second trailer or newer trailers because this movie was supposed to come out a long time ago. Denis Villeneuve, I believe is how the name is pronounced, is the director whose visual aesthetic is brilliant. I hope this movie makes enough money to make part two, but unfortunately, I feel like Denis Villeneuve's track record is brilliance, which means that the general public is like, I don't know if this is for me. So I don't know. But anyway, Dune, it captures our imagination. There's a lot of things to steal from it. I'm not saying that we should make a harsh world plus houses plus psychic witches plus what I'm saying is that all of those things added together make a tapestry that's very real. As a matter of fact, I suppose you could make a book called "Everything I Learned from Dune," and world build that way. But we can use these as examples. And listen, it's not really theft if you're doing it as an homage. If you're learning from the best, so and why not learn from the best? Now my opinion of the writer. Dianetics and Scientology and all that kind of stuff. But the book series, much like the Lovecraftian stuff, it's like pull from it what you will. And I personally, I find a lot of enjoyment from it, and I can't wait for the movie to come out and whatnot. And maybe I should revisit the audiobooks. I don't know. All right, guys. You guys have a great day. Thank you very much for joining the show. Next week we will start into this idea where I'm recruiting you guys to help actually bring about a published material as we start the world build. Now, I will give you guys more details as we go along, and we're going to do this very small. So we're going to start making some like random tables, and you guys are going to input into it. And this will be like a PDF, and you'll be able to get it printed on demand. I'm not exactly sure what it's going to be yet, but I have an idea. I don't know if it's going to be straight up world building, or we're going to start building cities or something of that nature, but we will. Ride eternal, shiny, and sand. It's coarse and gets everywhere. I hate sand. You know what? Side note, food for thought. Have you noticed many of our favorite intellectual properties involve at least one location that is nothing but sand and desolate? Let's think about that. Star Wars, Mad Max, Dune. What is it about sand, desolation, and desert worlds that strikes our imagination? Is it the elimination of society in general, and it's blank slated, and on top of this blank slate, literally sandbox, that we start inputting things like, oh, we're going to put some NPCs and some locations and add some drama in essentially a confined location. It's a bottle story told on an expansive plane, but a small story. Is that it? I don't know. It's something to think about. All right, guys. Have a great one. I've got to get out of here. Everybody, ride eternal shiny chrome. Thank you, Pelora. Everybody. Yep. Mike says it's the harshest. Water is life. Sand is death. Ooh, yeah, yeah. Water has water. You could tell I'm from the Philly tri-state area. It's WARDER water. That's what I drink. Unless it's a WUDDER water. Maybe I'm water instead of water. No, I'm more water. Anyway, yes, water is life. It often is related to life. We Waterfalls and drinking water, and that's where life springs from. So, okay, I I think you got it. I think you got it. All right, dude. Everybody get out of here. Have a great one. Oh, call to action. Like, share, subscribe, follow, let people know about the show if you'd like. Bring some of your best and brightest people. Heck, if you're up at the crack of dawn and you need to go to sleep, listen to my dulcet tones and it surely will rock you to bed. Guys, have a great one.